In 1998, a man by the name of Jeff Kinney had an idea. He had the idea of a middle schooler who writes illustrated stories about his personal life. Jeff Kinney has always had an interest in writing and creating stories. When he was in university, he originally majored in computer science, but switched to criminal justice just to have more time to work on his comics. In May 2004, Jeff Kinney released an online version of the story titled Diary of a Wimpy Kid. The website made daily entries until June 2005. In February 2006, Jeff signed a multi-book deal with publisher Harry N. Abrams Incorporated to turn Diary of a Wimpy Kid into an actual book series, starting with the first book that came out on April 1st, 2007. The book became an instant hit. The book opens up featuring the main character Rodrick Heffley, a middle schooler that is sadly already balding and has 3 strands of hair left on his head. He starts off by saying that the only reason why he's writing in this diary is because he doesn't want to answer quote-unquote stupid questions.
Greg already tell us about your childhood.
Were you always so smart and handsome?
Forget to read my diary, because I'm too rich and famous, of course.
It's okay. We all have our fantasies. Rodrick Heffley analyzes his fellow classmates and determines their self-worth by their popularity. He places himself 52nd or 53rd most popular. He can't seem to decide, even though there's not really any difference between the two numbers. But he doesn't have to worry because a classmate named Charlie Davies is getting braces. So he's going to move up a spot in his completely made-up social hierarchy. I don't know how someone getting braces is going to make someone change their perception about that person, or how a person is going to act different because they got braces. How is someone going to get less popular from getting braces? His popularity hierarchy makes no sense. From this instance, it's not about popularity. Greg is attacking this kid about his intrinsic attributes. And of course, in the entire book, Greg shows no proof that there's a correlation between Charlie getting less interaction with people and him having his braces. Therefore, that shows that Rodrick Heffley just hates people with braces, and that's completely understandable. Rodrick Heffley has a best friend named Riley Jefferson. Greg tries explaining his popularity BS to him, but Riley doesn't really seem to care, and puts him at 150 on the ranking system for some reason. The cheese touch. The cheese touch originated from a piece of moldy cheese lying on the school's basketball court. The first person to have the cheese touch was Darren Walsh, who touched it with his finger. The cheese touch is basically like cooties. You have it until you pass it on to someone else. The only way to protect yourself from the cheese touch is by crossing your fingers. Once someone gets a cheese touch, it is basically the worst thing that can happen to a 12-year-old in Diary of a Wimpy Kid. They are ostracized from society and everyone will do their best to stay away from them. Rodrick Heffley. Obviously the best character, does a little bit of tomfoolery, and once told him that he slept through the entire summer, and he woke up just in time for his first day of school. Greg tries defending himself for falling for it by saying that Rodrick dressed up in his school clothes, set his alarm clock ahead to make it look like it was morning, and closed the curtains so he couldn't see that it was still dark out. That's not an excuse, he's just more brain dead than Rodrick. While getting ready, his dad woke up and was rightfully mad. Greg tries telling him what Rodrick did, but too bad, so sad. Rodrick covered up his tracks really well, via pretending to sleep. Rodrick is in a band named Loaded Diaper. He likes heavy metal, and that's the type of genre of music that his band plays. Rodrick wears headphones while listening to his music on his family stereo because he doesn't like when his mom is dancing around like a monkey. Rodrick got a new heavy metal CD with a parental warning sticker on it. Greg wants to listen to the CD, so he brought the CD to school and told Rowley to bring his CD player, and later got caught with the CD player. So that night when everyone was in bed, Greg plugged in the headphones, put in the CD, cranked the volume really high, and pressed play.
Alright, cool.
Bitch, what are you doing? This is not Elden Ring. I'm not going to steal your maidens, or whatever the bloody Monkley couldn't do. Fall in line, Hoover. You do it again. Greg Heffley, you are so dumb, holy shit. Like, after you get out of this fever dream, or acid trip, or whatever is going on in that hollow ass unnaturally circle head of yours, you are dead.
The dumbass actually forgot to plug in the headphones. And his dad subsequently grounded him after that, and he got a video game ban for a week. A couple of days later, Rodrick got in trouble because Manny Heffley, the 3-year-old war crime veteran wanted in 48 different countries for 78 counts of terrorism. He took one of Rodrick's magazines that objectified women or something, and he brought it to his preschool for show and tell. Rodrick had to write out answers to a bunch of questions on a paper by his mom.
Did owning this magazine make you a better person?
No.
Did it make you more popular at school?
No.
How do you feel about having owned this type of magazine now?
I feel ashamed.
How do you feel about having owned this type of magazine now?
I'm sorry, women.
I'm sorry, women. I'm sorry, women. I'm sorry, women.
I love women.
At school, it is announced that school government elections are coming up, and Greg decides to run for school treasurer. He finds out someone else is running, Marty Porter. Greg tries smearing his reputation with posters, but it got thrown out by the vice principal. It is October, and Greg and Rowley attempt to build their own haunted house in Rowley's basement, but a child gets scared and crawls under the bed. Then Rowley's father catches them both and shuts their haunted house down. On Halloween, Greg and Rowley go trick-or-treating. Greg is a pirate, and Rowley is Shy Guy from Super Mario. While trick-or-treating, they get soaked by a group of high schoolers in a truck. When Greg and Rowley threaten to call the cops, the teenagers chase them. They hide in Greg's grandma's house. Susan tells him to come home, and when Greg sees the coast is clear, he ends up being soaked by his father in the driveway. And the next day, his grandmother's house ends up getting toilet papered.
Oh, hell no.
In gym class, Greg and the boys in his class are doing a wrestling unit. They are paired up by weight. Greg is a twig, so he has to fight another twig named Fregley. I'm not gonna lie though, Fregley is kinda weird. He likes to talk about his secret freckles, and he really wants people to see it. But Fregley pinned Greg's ass in every way imaginable. To save himself from the embarrassment, the next day he wears more clothing so he gives the illusion that he gained more weight. But he's still not heavy enough to fight another kid. I mean, what makes Greg think that he could beat a kid that is heavier than him if he can't beat the lightest kid in his class? That's why weight classes exist, moron. Greg becomes insecure and realizes he wants to gain weight by muscle, so he approaches his parents for a bench press. Like he can't just do normal bodyweight exercises, but they want to wait to purchase one until Christmas. Greg doesn't want to mate, so he makes his own barbell using 2 milk jugs with sand in it and a broomstick, and invites Rowley to spot him. When Rowley can't do more than 5 reps, the barbell falls on top of him and can't get the barbell off his chest. Greg didn't help him for some reason, but eventually helped him, only because Rowley was biting into the jug to get the sand out. After that, Rowley didn't want to work out with him, rightfully so. He was about to become a victim of manslaughter, and Greg blames Rowley for not having dedication, which is very ironic. Susan makes Greg try out for the Wizard of Oz school play. The actual play was a disaster. It just ended up being an apple fight. As Christmas approaches, Greg asks for the video game Twisted Wizard, but on Christmas morning, Greg receives a bench press, but doesn't really have the motivation to do anything with it anymore. But Greg did actually get the video game though, but he didn't receive it because by accident, Susan accidentally switched the red sweater that was meant for the giving tree from the church program with Greg's video game. So now some random guy has the video game.
What is this bullshit? Assholes.
When Greg teases Manny on New Year's Eve by making him eat a tiny black ball and telling him that it was a spider, he gets sent to bed early. In January, Greg and Rowley invented a game for the big wheel that Rowley got him for Christmas. The gist of the game is, Greg throws a football at Rowley as he rides down the hill. Only Greg gets to throw the football, of course, which results in Rowley breaking his hand and getting lots of sympathy and attention from the girls at school. Greg tried capitalizing off of Rowley's injury by telling everyone that he was the one that broke his arm. Obviously, this just made him look like an asshole. The next day, Greg fixed an injury to get sympathy from the girls, but it didn't really work out. He even made a sympathy sheet and asked people to sign it. Like, that's an absolute reach. God forbid people are paying attention to a person that is not named Greg Heffley. Greg and Rowley create comics that end with the catchphrase Zooey Mama. Greg creates his own character called Creighton the Cretin, submits several samples and wins the position. However, Mr. Ira revises Greg's comic into a comic that promotes math. Greg and Rowley sign up for a safety patrol to walk kindergartners home halfway through the day. When Rowley's absent one day, Greg chases the kindergartners with a worm on a stick. And Rowley gets blamed because a woman mistook Greg as Rowley. So Rowley got laid off his job. Greg confessed to him while he already got in trouble. Greg also tried manipulating Rowley, basically into thinking what he did wasn't that bad, because it was a learning experience. Well, Rowley told the school the actual truth, and Greg got laid off his job indefinitely. This situation severed Rowley's and Greg's friendship for a month. Then they got into a fight about who the true creator was of the Zooey Mama comic. But then a bunch of teenagers pulled up and made Rowley eat the moldy cheese on the ground. After that, the teenagers left him alone, and then Greg and Rowley become friends again. But Greg becomes jealous of Rowley again when Rowley is the class clown in the yearbook instead of him, and he throws the yearbook in the trash. I honestly think this is a perfectly fine friendship and not toxic at all. Greg is writing in his new journal. School is getting ready to start back up for the year, and over the summer, Greg joined the swim team. But like most things in his life, he quits. Rodrick got a hold of his last journal, so he has to keep this one locked up. Greg remembers that he got a cheese touch and passes it on to the unsuspecting student, Jeremy Pindle. Susan tries to make Greg and Rodrick bond together, so she made Rodrick pick up Greg after school. Greg told him to take it slow with the van, and Rodrick drove as fast as he possibly could. When they got home, Greg called him the weakest insult ever known to man. Then Rodrick shoved Greg. Susan saw that and made them write what they did wrong and draw a picture along with it to settle their differences. Greg reveals that Rodrick knows something embarrassing that Greg did over the summer, so Greg refuses to mess with him, so he doesn't reveal this. Rodrick makes his dad type up his essay because he doesn't know how to type on a keyboard, so he writes his essay in a book, then hands it to his dad to type it out. But there are so many careless errors, so he gets frustrated and just rewrites the entire essay. Chirag Gupta is a boy in Greg's class. After a big going away party, Greg decides to pull a welcome back to school prank on him. Greg ends up getting the entire classroom in on it by pretending that they don't see him. But Chirag doesn't take it well, so he goes to the principal to complain. But the principal can't understand Chirag's English and gets the wrong kid. But later on, Greg and Chirag become friends again. Susan starts a game using the currency called Mom Bucks, which can be earned by doing chores around the house and being an overall wholesome person. Susan handed both Greg and Rodrick 1,000 Mom Bucks to get them both started. Rodrick cashed out all of his to get heavy metal magazines. Greg's mother and father goes away for some alone time, and they leave Manny with Greg's grandparents. Rodrick makes sure that his parents are gone, and then he calls his friends and invites them over for a party. Greg has never been to a high school party, so obviously he kept his mouth shut. Rodrick told Greg to get more tables from the basement, so he went downstairs when he heard a click from the door. That's pretty unfortunate to live in a house where there are doors that have locks on the outside of the door, but not on the inside. Who was the person on drugs designing these doors?
All I do is think about you, and this is a day.
Rodrick's friends left, it was 3 p.m. Greg had nothing to do with the party, but Rodrick knew about the secret and threatened to blackmail him if he didn't help with cleaning it up. When their parents come home, Frank instantly finds out there is something wrong with the bathroom door. Greg and Rodrick switched out the door because someone wrote a message on the original door in permanent marker. Susan learns about this role-playing game called Magic and Monsters. She bought some books so her son could play together, but unfortunately Rodrick doesn't really make an effort to try playing the game, since that didn't really work out. Susan made Rodrick give both Rowley and Greg drum lessons in exchange for some of mom bucks. In their first session, the class ended in like 15 minutes because Rodrick needed to go hang out with his friends. A couple of days later, Greg's history paper is due, and he's been procrastinating the entire time. He couldn't get help from his dad because he basically denied to help him. Rodrick offers his paper for $5, but Greg denies and tries doing his paper by himself. While trying to do it, the power goes off so conveniently. Greg goes to Rodrick for the paper, but his price has risen to 20,000 mom bucks, which is $200. The desperate Greg Heffley gathered thousands of dollars in mom bucks to give to Rodrick, and he successfully got the paper. The next day, he reads the paper and he realized, wow, this paper is actually dog water. Rodrick tries to use the mom bucks that he gotten from Greg all at once, but Susan suspects something. She knows that Rodrick hasn't done anything to earn all those mom bucks, and when she finds out, she ends the game. Susan and Frank find out about the party Rodrick had, so he and Greg both got grounded. So when Susan and Frank have to both leave the house again, they will have to go to their grandfather's house. Anyways, his school announces the school winter talent show. Riley stays the night at Greg's house, and Greg ends up hurting Rowley. Manny snitches on Greg. Then Susan makes Greg the assistant of Scotty Douglas's magic show since Rowley can't do it. Rodrick has been working on a science project for school, but had to resubmit it because they thought his science project sucked. His parents made him stop practicing with his band so he could focus on his project. Rodrick said he didn't care about school and his plan was to win the show, quit school, and be in his band full time. Rodrick didn't win and got really mad at Greg for not recording the video, so he told everyone the secret, which was Greg had accidentally walked into the women's bathroom when they were visiting their grandfather at Leisure Towers Apartments, leading him to getting carried out by security. But surprisingly, when Greg went back to school, he was seen as cool, because somehow the story has been changed to the story that Greg managed to get into the girls' locker room at Crossland High School. But Rodrick still needs to hand in the science project or else he's gonna fail school, so Greg helps him with his project. It is New Year's Day. Greg is writing and constructing the resolution of his family members and quits the resolution of his own because he's too perfect. There is a teenager that Rodrick is friends with named Lenwood Heath. Frank has called the police on him a bunch of times, and that made him realize that his kids are losers and need to touch some grass and get some bitches. Greg and Riley decided to make a time capsule. First, they need to dig a hole, but unfortunately, the ground was solid as a rock, and Greg could barely make a dent in it, so he made Riley do the whole thing while the bastard was inside drinking. Even after that, he's still not happy. The next month, Greg's lunch has no snack and only fruits, and he complains that he has no energy for the entire day. Because of that, Greg finds out that someone has been secretly eating all the snacks, and he thinks it's Rodrick, but he doesn't have any evidence. Greg's report card came out and he's failing every single subject. Susan tells him to wait for Frank to come home to see what he says about it, so Greg goes to play bingo with his grandmother to avoid the encounter. Next night, Greg finds out who the snack bandit is, and it's his own father. Anyways, Valentine's Day, and the big dance is coming up. Greg figures out that it would be perfect to make moves on this girl named Holly Hills. However, when he gets the courage to speak to her,
If you like pina coladas, getting caught in the rain. If you're not into yoga, and you gotta have a brain. If you like making love at midnight, in the dunes by the cave.
Annie keeps calling his brother a Greg is a loser, and Rodrick is being Rodrick. Frank realizes his children are a disappointment, so he enrolls Rodrick in an SAT course and signs up Greg on the soccer team. Greg sucks and wants to quit, but Frank doesn't let him because he's not a quitter. Frank takes him and Rodrick to the movies, where they run into Lenwood Heath, and Lenwood doesn't seem like the person he used to be. Frank is considering putting Greg in a military school, so Greg says he wants to join the Boy Scouts instead of soccer, and Frank agrees. Boy Scout was obviously better for Greg Greg than soccer, mainly because he and Raleigh didn't need any talent for anything, and they got a badge for it. Greg asks his father if he wants to go on a father-son camping trip, so Greg can show him all that he learned during scouts. It ends up raining the day of the trip, so the three had to stay in a hotel. While in the hotel, Rodrick tricks Greg into coming to the door, saying that Holly Hill's family is there, and Greg was only in his underwear, and he got shoved out into the hallway. Rodrick locks the door. Greg hides by the vending machine because he knows that his father will eventually go there to buy something. When his father finds him there, Frank is disappointed. The camping trip was a disappointment, and there was no way out of talking his way out of his dad putting him in a military school, so he is going to stop trying. But there was a party where all his family had to come, and Frank said to him that he owes him a massive favor if he could come up with a way to go home early. So now he didn't have to go to military school over the summer. Summer vacation begins, and Susan is frustrated that he spends too much time indoors playing video games. Frank is irritated that he sleeps through the entire day, but the next day he goes to hang out at Raleigh's family's club swimming pool, but couldn't be invited anymore because he annoyed Raleigh's dad. Susan starts a book club for all the boys in the neighborhood, which she forced the boys to read books about dumb shit. The book club ends abruptly when Raleigh's dad comes to the door with a bill from the country club for slushy drinks. Greg and Raleigh had to pay for their drinks. They start up a poorly ran lawn mowing service. The first thing they did was make a poster. Raleigh's computer scanned the image, then they pasted their heads onto buff guys who were originally on the card. Then they got clip arts of lawn mowing tools and put them together. I gotta say, Greg and Raleigh have great graphic designing skills. It would have been better use of their time starting up a freelance business for graphic designing instead of doing a terrible job mowing people's lawns. But nobody hit them up about their lawn mowing business, so they just did business with Greg's grandma's friend. But too bad Greg and Raleigh couldn't do the bare minimum of learning how to use a lawnmower, so the business just kind of blew up in their face. Susan just ended up using Greg's birthday money to pay his debt. Susan takes the family on a trip to the pet store to get a fish. The fish is very forgettable, and during the family's trip to the water park, Greg's fish dies. So Frank decides to get the family a dog named Sweetie. Rodrick is asked to go buy a dog bowl for Sweetie, but misspells the name on the bowl as Sweaty. Greg and his mom once again return to the public pool. Instead of going after Holly Hill, he fixes his eyes on her older sister, Heather Hills, who is a sister and a lifeguard in the public pool. In the bathroom, Greg does 2 push-ups because that's the max he could do, and he flexes his bones in the mirror. Greg basically tried doing Heather's job for her, but she completely ignores him, which is probably a good thing. Greg and Raleigh reunite together and take a trip to a cabin. Greg didn't like the cabin, so he wrote an email to his mother telling him to get him out of there with Mr. Jefferson's computer. His mother thanks the emails from Mr. Jefferson, and Greg is found out. Instead of being angry, Mr. Jefferson takes the family to the boardwalk, where Greg can finally fulfill his wish to ride the cranium shaker. Later in the cabin, Greg pulls a prank on Raleigh, which leads him getting sent home early. Rodrick tells Greg that Frank is going to sell him because of the actions he committed during the cabin trip. Of course, this obviously makes no sense, and Greg realizes that his dad isn't trying to sell him, mainly because human trafficking is illegal in America. When he realizes this, him and his dad bond over by talking shit about some comic they hate named Lil Cutie. Summer vacation is coming to a close. Greg and Raleigh have gone to a fight and still haven't recovered from it. Greg worries that in the beginning of the school year, he will be left with no friends. So he has 2 boys lined up to take Raleigh's place, but he doesn't really like them. Tells us that he needs Raleigh to come forward and apologize to him, or else he's going to write an autobiography in the future when he gets rich and famous and make Raleigh look bad. And even goes out to say that Raleigh will rip him off. He really just expects us to side with him, even though we have no clue why the hell they even got in a fight. Greg sees Raleigh throwing balls with grown-ass men, and he's sad because he wants to be the one throwing balls. Susan decides to go back to school for some reason. The 3 males try taking care of themselves and are shown to be completely incompetent at it. So Susan hires a maid named Isabella. Greg goes to the dentist and learns how fucked up his teeth is and is required to wear a headgear, but found a reason not to. In school, he's given a project in his health class and has to take care of an egg like it's a child, but ends up letting his mom cook it into scrambled eggs. This presents the remarkable theme of the book. If you have an unwanted child, cook it into scrambled eggs. Isabella the maid avoids doing any actual work around the house, eating client snacks that are meant for her, and sleeping on the client's child's bed. I gotta agree with Greg, that's kind of weird. I think she may be a Russian spy. infiltrating a middle-class white American family's home to get intel on American Homo sapiens. I don't know. But Isabel was fired when she invited all the maids in the neighborhood to watch TV in her client's house. Then the school announces a lock-in, basically an all-night slumber party, but the people who attended the lock-in were mostly boys and the girls were separated into a different room. Then it's revealed that he and Raleigh have been invited to one of Jordan Jury's parties. They're both thrilled, but when Greg finds out he can't go, he tries to talk Raleigh out of not going either. But Raleigh says that he can do whatever he wants like a normal person because he's not some type of puppet. Greg misses out on the party because he has to attend to his uncle's wedding. After the wedding, Greg's grandma tells him to enjoy his childhood while it's still here, so he decides to make up with Raleigh and become best friends again. Christmas is getting close, and Greg is panicked about being good because even though he's a teenager, he still believes in Santa Claus for some reason. Greg is obsessed with playing this new game called Net Critters and needs cash to buy cosmetics for his virtual pet chihuahua. But Susan will not give him the money, so he will have to wait until Christmas to ask for a bunch of in-game currency. He tries shoveling snow for money, but he realizes that it's too much work and he sucks. Greg and Raleigh decide to have a holiday bazaar like his school. They will sell concession snacks, games, and gifts. Greg and Raleigh discover that it's too expensive to advertise in the local newspaper, so Greg and Raleigh decide to advertise their bazaar by creating signs and taping them to the school wall. When rain begins to fall, it causes the sign to drip and green ink to stain the bricks. Greg and Raleigh run away when the teacher almost catches them. The newspaper carries out a story about the vandalism that happened on the school ground, and the school announcements encourage the person to turn themselves over. Raleigh submits an anonymous note saying that he and Greg are responsible for the vandalism. Greg refuses to rat on Raleigh, so he is now forced to clean the bricks alone. Greg learns that the police have paid a visit to his house. No one was home, so they had only left a note. Fortunately, that night there was a blizzard, so that stopped the cops from coming back to the home. Frank takes a hotel room near work since he cannot make it home. Greg can't play Net Critters because Manny traded all his in-game currency to tokens and blew all the tokens into the game's casino. Nothing like getting into gambling at the rightful age of 3 years old. He also changed the password for the account and Greg can no longer get in it. Manny breaks their mom's glasses and Greg is the one who must help his mom take care of Manny. The basement floods as a result of all the snow. Rodrick, whose bedroom is in the basement, must share Greg's bedroom upstairs. Greg's dad returns home on Christmas Eve and is sent off to drop a toy donation at the toy drive-in outside the police station. Greg does this in a ski mask so the police cannot identify him. He also goes to the church to see if anyone has left any money for him. The church was covered in snow, so he shoveled the snow, but he found out nothing was there. The newspaper carries a story the next morning of an anonymous do-gooder, so Greg decides to do a second edition of his own newspaper to come forward as the do-gooder. There's a knock on the door, and Greg finds out his uncle Gary is outside, and he wasn't really happy to see his younger brother. Gary asks for a loan from Frank for a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity to buy a Boston t-shirt stand. However, all the t-shirts were misspelled, saying Boston instead of Boston. He didn't pay Gary any money because Gary has a habit of never paying anyone back. Gary was broke, so he needed a place to stay until he got back on his feet again. Frank continuously urges Gary to get a job, save money, and move out. Vice Principal Roy announces that there will be special elections for student council and all the elected student positions because all the other student governments skipped all their meetings to go to recess instead. So he convinces Raleigh to run so he can use Raleigh as a puppet politician and make the decisions for him. Raleigh agrees to this, running for the position of social chairperson. He wins because no one will run against him. A student named Eugene Ellis wins presidency on a promise to stock all the school bathrooms with soft toilet tissue papers. After Eugene is elected, Mrs. Birch, the student council advisor, explains that this will not be possible due to the cost. Eugene then confronts Mrs. Birch that the teachers' bathrooms are stocked with soft toilet tissue papers. Then Mrs. Birch then allows all students to bring their own toilet paper from home, but it ends up becoming a complete total disaster. Valentine's Day is coming up and he decides to take a girl he doesn't really know named Abigail Brown to the dance. Raleigh would be a third wheeler and Raleigh's dad would be the driver. Before they went out, Raleigh wore a scarf because he thought that he might have gotten the chicken pox. They went to 2 restaurants which were terrible. Raleigh was hitting it off with Abigail and Greg Heffley was becoming the third wheeler. So then they went to the actual dance. The boy that Abigail was actually supposed to go with came to the party with another girl, and that causes Abigail to burst out in tears. Greg decides to dance with her to make her feel better.
Hey, you're looking like, come on, just let the dance away with me. Come on, show me your moves, let's rock away with me. Let's go, looking like, come on, just let the dance away with me. Come on, show me your moves, let's rock away with me. Let's go.
He sees a red spot on her chin, thinking that it's chickenpox. It turns out to only be a pimple, and that completely destroys Greg and Abigail's non-existent relationship. It also turns out that Raleigh doesn't have a chickenpox, but it was just acne. But the next day, Greg actually ends up coming down with the chickenpox. And the next day, he learns that Raleigh and Abigail became a couple. Uncle Gary wins $40,000 from a lottery ticket and moves out. Raleigh's relationship with Abigail is putting a wedge between him and Greg's friendship, and obviously Greg is jealous, as we have seen time to time from previous situations. Greg has no one to do his bidding and protect him. He is frustrated by this, so he turns to a boy named Fregley once again. Greg teaches Fregley how to do what Raleigh used to do for him: scout for dog poop so Greg doesn't step in it, carry his books, play 5-second rule at the lunch table. But it completely backfires when Fregley becomes so popular that Greg kinda just fades into dust. For spring break, Greg's aunts and cousins are coming to town for Easter, but Aunt Gretchen and the two twin boys left only after 2 days, since one of the boys called the cops when there was no more ketchup in the refrigerator. During the party, Greg finds an 8-ball under Rodrick's bed and has the brilliant idea of using the magic 8-ball to make all of his decisions that can be answered with a yes or no question. At school, Greg continues to use his magic 8-ball. Greg uses the magic 8-ball to answer questions on the social studies test and is accused of cheating. Vice Principal Roy tells Greg that if he doesn't pull up his grades in the next couple of weeks, he will have to attend summer school. So Greg starts doing all of his assignments to assure he doesn't go to summer school. Greg gets the job as a yearbook photographer. He enjoys the position since it pays $5 for every photo. Greg resigns from the position, however, after having to take the cutest couple photo of Raleigh and Abigail. 1 week after the photo shoot involving Raleigh and Abigail, the two split up because Abigail decides to go back to her ex-boyfriend. Greg reaches out to Raleigh and the two become friends again. It is summer vacation and Greg is looking forward to a summer of relaxing and doing nothing. But Susan has something else in mind. After reading an article about family vacations in Family Frolic magazine as a guide to their vacation, the rest of the family is uncertain about the vacation, but regardless, they pack all their shit in the minivan. They tie Frank's old boat to the back and they get going. The family had to miss several sightseeing opportunities because Manny is napping and they do not want to wake him up. They decide to pick up some food from the grocery store and stop to rest at a dirty rundown motel for the night. One of the things Rodrick bought from the grocery store was a frozen pizza. He tries to microwave it, but the microwave is actually a safe. I don't care what you say, I don't blame Rodrick, because that is the most microwave looking safe I've ever seen in my entire life. And do motels just have free usable safes lying around in their rooms for no reason? The family had to eat sugar wafers and breath mints for dinner. There was nothing to do, so Greg and Rodrick go use the hot tub, but a large, hairy, bearded man and his family are using it and won't get out. Greg nicknames the families the Beardos. When Greg tries to go to sleep, he later hears sounds outside. He discovers the Beardo children are ramming into a janitorial cart into the wall. Greg yells at them, but Greg rushes back into his room because Mr. Beardo Man comes out. The next day, the family heads to an annual fair. Greg barely avoids the Beardos. Manny guesses the weight of a pig at a weight guessing contest and wins the baby pig as a result. Having the pet pig becomes an issue though, eating out of the minibar, making a ruckus in the minivan, and causing Frank to swerve over the side of the road. Frank gave up the pig to a petting zoo, and Manny was very unhappy with this. After the minivan's sunroof breaks, rain floods in. No one inside but Susan was still optimistic that the family still had a chance to have a good vacation, and will stop following the family frolic guidelines. Greg and his family end up in a small town diner with amazing apple pie. When driving, the family accidentally interrupts a funeral. Greg's family decides to head to the beach, stuck on the bridge to the beach. Greg decides to feed a seagull through the sunroof. Leading to the minivan being flooded with seagulls, causing a fender bender. So Greg and his family decide to spend the next few hours at Soak Central, an amusement park. They put their personal possessions away in a locker, then manage to find a lawn chair to put their clothes on to go swimming. Greg discovers that the Beardo family has taken their chair, left their clothes on the ground, and taken their locker key. Greg and his family have the staff open their locker, only to discover that their locker is empty. Their family head home because they've just had enough. As they head home, they discover which motel the Beardos were staying at. They sneak into the Beardos' room to see if their personal possessions can be found. Frank is caught using the bathroom. The minivan radiator breaks, causing a flat tire. A Hispanic father and son stop to help, but they don't speak English.
Tienes que ayudarme. Mi cerdo mascota está cautivo en un zoológico. Está a punto de ser brutalmente asesinado por estas repugnantes criaturas degeneradas llamadas Homo sapiens. Uno de los hombres detrás de mí se llama Frank Kefly. Él es el que casi no tiene vello en su yeye, cabeza de culo. El hermano tiene la constitución de un muñeco de palitos. Tiene fideos para brazos y piernas con una gran cabeza de culo que se corta fácilmente, y puede usar para jugar básquetbol con él. Bueno, él es el que intercambió mi cerdo. Ahora te exijo que arregles el auto de mi familia. Si no lo haces recibirás una bomba casera en tu buzón. ¿Qué estás mirando? Ponte a trabajar, campesinos.
Sí.
Manny surprises everyone by speaking fluent Spanish. Manny directs the father and the son to the petting zoo. Frank and Susan agree to bring the baby pig back home and keep it as a pet. At home, Frank spends days canceling his credit cards and ordering new ones. Greg later finds out he had the locker key all along, and the number on the key was different than the locker the staff had opened up. Greg contemplates what to do next upon finding the key.
DOA.
Hey, money's got a